My name is Merritt Sterling. I'm 32. For my parents' retirement party, I flew 3,000 miles with a simple brown folder. Before I could even sit down, Mom looked at me and said, "We told you to hide in the background." Then Dad pushed past me and said, "We do not want to hear from the daughter who abandoned us." I held my folder and I walked to the stage. When they found out what was inside, what it proved, what it meant, and whose stolen money actually paid for their perfect lifestyle, they lost everything in front of the guests. Before I take you back to the beginning, if you end up liking this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if it genuinely stays with you. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? The rain in Portland hasn't stopped for 3 days. It's October 14th, 4:15 p.m., and I am sitting in an empty booth at a coffee shop on Belmont Street, watching the water blur the headlights of passing cars. The coffee in my mug went cold an hour ago. Right now my hands are resting on a standard brown manila folder. It costs maybe 20 cents at any office supply store. But the papers inside this folder took me 2 years, thousands of dollars in legal fees, and countless sleepless nights to put together. Tomorrow morning, I am boarding a Delta flight to Boston for my parents' grand retirement party. Thaddeus and Cordelia Sterling. If you live in their upscale neighborhood of Chestnut Hill, you definitely know them. My father spent 35 years as a senior loan officer at a major bank. My mother ran the local charity drives, organized the school bake sales, and smiled for the cameras in the local newspaper. To the outside world, they are the perfect couple, generous, kind, and respectable. But public faces are just masks. I am 32 years old, and I teach 11th grade history at Lincoln High School here in Oregon. I make $62,000 a year before taxes. I grade papers until midnight, buy my own classroom supplies, and live in a one-bedroom apartment with a radiator that clanks all night. My parents like to tell their friends that I am finding myself on the West Coast. It sounds so supportive when they say it at dinner parties. In reality, they just want me far away, because I don't fit into the perfect picture they built around my younger sister Fallon. Fallon is 29. She lives 10 minutes away from my parents in a 4-bedroom house that my father helped her buy. Her husband Vaughn works in real estate. They drive nice cars, wear nice clothes, and have a beautiful life. I still remember a phone call from 3 years ago. It was November 12th, 2020. My transmission had completely died on the highway, and the mechanic at the shop handed me a bill for $2,400. I didn't have it. My savings were drained from medical bills after a bad flu turned into pneumonia. I swallowed my pride, walked outside into the freezing wind, and called my dad. "Dad," I had said, my voice shaking, "I'm stranded. The car is dead. I need $2,400 to fix it so I can get to work. I can pay you back $50 a month." There was a long pause on the phone. Then, the heavy sigh. The sigh he always used to remind me how much of a burden I was. "We are not a bank, Merritt," he said, his voice slow and tight. "You chose to move across the country. You chose a low-paying job. You have to learn how to manage your finances like an adult. If I bail you out, you will never learn responsibility." He hung up. I ended up taking out a terrible high-interest payday loan just to get my car back. 2 weeks later, I flew home for Thanksgiving. I sat at the dining table, silently eating my turkey, when my mother proudly announced that they had just gifted Fallon and Vaughn $15,000 to remodel their guest bathroom. "Fallon has been so stressed with her home decor blog," Mom had said, smiling warmly at my sister. "We just wanted to give her a little peaceful space. Family takes care of family." I didn't say a word. I just smiled, took a sip of my water, and nodded. You might wonder why I never screamed, why I never flipped the table or demanded to know why I was treated so differently. It is because when you grow up in a house like that, you learn that speaking up only makes it worse. If I showed anger, my mother would cry and say I was ruining the family dinner. My father would call me ungrateful. They would twist everything until I was the one apologizing. So, I stayed quiet. I kept showing up to the holidays. I kept calling on Sunday mornings. I held on to this desperate, foolish hope that if I just smiled enough, if I just asked for nothing, one day they would look at me with the same warmth they gave to Fallon. But this folder sitting on the table in front of me changed all of that. I slide my thumb over the edge of the brown paper. The flight to Boston leaves at 6 a.m. They are expecting me to show up, stand in the background and clap while they celebrate their perfect life and their perfect retirement. They have no idea what I am bringing with me. The boarding pass in my hand crinkles as I walk down the jet bridge toward Delta Flight 1142. It is 5:30 a.m., and the Portland sky is still pitch black. I find my window seat, slide my heavy backpack under the seat in front of me, and lean my head against the cold plastic of the cabin wall. Inside that backpack is the folder. As the plane engines roar to life, and we lift off into the thick gray clouds, my mind pulls me back to the exact moment my world broke into pieces. It was February 18th, 2022. Just over a year ago, I had saved every extra dollar I made from tutoring on weekends. For 4 years I ate instant noodles, skipped movies with friends, and wore winter coats until the zippers broke. I had finally saved $35,000 for a down payment on a tiny, 600-square-foot condo on Hawthorne Boulevard. It had peeling yellow paint and old wooden floors, but it was going to be mine. A safe place. I was sitting in a small, glass-walled office at the U.S. Bank branch on Burnside Street. Across from me sat a young mortgage officer named Kellen Adler. He was clicking his mouse, looking at his computer screen. I was smiling, hands folded in my lap, waiting for him to say I was approved. Instead, his typing stopped. A heavy, awkward silence filled the small room. "Miss Sterling," Kellen said softly, avoiding my eyes, "are you aware of a severe delinquency on your credit report? A commercial line of credit?" My smile froze. "No, that has to be a mistake. I only have my student loans and a small credit card." He turned his monitor toward me. My eyes scanned the screen, trying to make sense of the red numbers. Crestview Properties LLC. Business line of credit. Originated, October 14th, 2020. Amount, $75,000. Status, defaulted. Sent to collections. I stared at the screen. The address registered to the business was 44 Oak Ridge Lane, Newton, Massachusetts. That was Fallon and Vaughn's home address. My chest suddenly felt tight. The air in the bank office seemed to vanish. I asked Kellen to print the documents. My hands shook as I held the papers. There it was, right on the second page. My full legal name, my social security number, and a digital signature that I had never made, listing me as the primary guarantor for Vaughn's real estate business. He used his executive override clearance as a senior loan officer to completely bypass the required ID checks and notary stamps. The loan was processed through the very same regional bank where my father, Thaddeus Sterling, was a senior loan officer. He had all my information from when I lived at home. He had the system access. When Vaughn's first real estate project started failing, Vaughn couldn't get a loan because his credit was already stretched to the limit. So, my father fixed the problem. He used my clean financial record to secure a $75,000 lifeline for his favorite daughter's husband. When the business failed and the loan defaulted, they didn't pay it. They didn't even call me to warn me. They just let the bank destroy my credit score, dropping it to a miserable 520, to protect themselves. "I'm sorry, Ms. Sterling," Kellen whispered, gently pulling the mortgage application away. "We cannot approve you for the condo." I don't remember walking out of the bank. I just remember the freezing rain hitting my face as I stood in the parking lot. I didn't scream. I didn't call the police. I walked into a nearby public restroom, locked the heavy metal door, sank to the dirty tile floor, and threw up. I sat there for 2 hours, hugging my knees. The physical pain in my chest was so sharp I thought my ribs were breaking. That afternoon on the bathroom floor, something inside me died. It wasn't just the loss of the condo. It was the crushing, absolute realization that I was never a daughter to them. I was a resource. I was collateral damage. They happily burned my future to the ground just to keep Fallon and Vaughn warm. The plane shakes slightly as we hit turbulence over the Midwest, pulling me back to the present. I take a deep breath. My eyes are dry. I haven't cried over them since that day in February. At 2:40 p.m., the plane tires hit the runway at Boston Logan International Airport. The East Coast air is bitter and damp as I walk out of the terminal. I take the shuttle to the rental car lot and pick up a basic gray Ford Focus. Tomorrow night, my parents are hosting their massive retirement celebration at the Harborside Country Club. Over 100 guests, bankers, local politicians, and family friends. I place my backpack on the passenger seat of the rental car. I unzip it just enough to see the brown manila folder resting safely inside. I turn the key in the ignition, pull out into the Boston traffic, and drive toward Chestnut Hill. I park the gray rental car in the parking lot of a cheap motel on Route 9, just outside of Chestnut Hill. The neon vacancy sign buzzes against the dark, wet sky. I am not staying at my parents' large, warm house. I cannot sleep under their roof. I unlock room 114, drop my backpack on the stiff mattress, and take out the brown folder. I run my hand over the smooth paper. To understand why this folder is so thick, you have to go back to the weeks right after I lost my apartment. It was March 10th, 2022. I was sitting at my small kitchen table in Portland, staring at a stack of 11th grade history essays. The radiator was making its usual clanking noise. My mind was completely stuck on the $75,000 loan. How does a bank approve a massive line of credit without the person ever walking into the building? I needed answers, but I knew my father would just lie. So, I picked up my phone and called the one person in the family who always preached about honesty and faith. My father's older sister, Aunt Linnea. Aunt Linnea was the family peacemaker. She hosted the Easter dinners. She baked peach cobbler. She was the one who always told me, family is the most important thing God gives us. When she answered the phone, I could hear the television playing a cooking show in the background. My hands were shaking as I told her everything. I told her about the bank, the rejected mortgage, the forged signature, and the collection agency that was now calling my phone every single morning. I expected her to gasp. I expected her to be angry at my father. Instead, the phone line went completely quiet. The television in the background was muted. Then Aunt Linnea let out a long, heavy sigh. "Oh, Merritt," she said, her voice soft and full of pity. "Your father told me he was going to clear that debt before you ever found out." My breath stopped in my throat. I squeezed the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "You knew. Merritt, please try to understand," Linnea whispered, her tone shifting into a gentle, pleading rhythm. "Vaughn got involved with some very aggressive investors. He was going to lose his business, and they were going to take the house. Fallon had just suffered a terrible miscarriage. She was crying every single day. Your father was backed into a corner. He just wanted to keep the peace." "He ruined my credit, Aunt Linnea," I said. My voice cracked, but I forced myself to speak clearly. "I couldn't buy my home. But you are so strong, sweetheart," she replied quickly, as if my pain was just a small inconvenience. "You always figure things out. You don't need the money the way Fallon does. She is very fragile. Your father made a mistake, but he did it to save her marriage. If you make a big deal out of this, you will destroy your mother. You don't want to break your mother's heart, do you?" I stared at the peeling paint on my kitchen wall. My own aunt, the woman who bought me my first bicycle. She knew I was being crushed under $75,000 of fraudulent debt, and she thought I should just stay quiet so Fallon wouldn't have to downgrade her lifestyle. "I'm going to report him for fraud," I said. "Merritt, don't be cruel." Linnea's voice snapped, suddenly sharp and panicked. "Don't you dare do this to him after everything he did with your grandmother Vada's estate. He already sacrificed so much of the trust to keep Vaughn out of jail, he had no other choice but to use your name for the rest." Linnea stopped talking. The silence that followed was so thick I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. "Grandmother Vada's trust?" I whispered. "Grandmother Vada died in 2018. My father was the executor of her will. He told me and Fallon that Grandma had spent all her money on nursing home care, and there was nothing left but a few old pieces of furniture. I have to go, Merritt. Please just talk to your father," Linnea stammered, and the call disconnected. I didn't cry. The deep, heavy sadness that had lived in my chest for a month suddenly burned away. It was replaced by a cold, sharp focus. I didn't grade a single paper that night. I opened my laptop and started digging. Because I am a history teacher, I know how to find public records. I know how to track paper trails. It took me 3 weeks and $150 in processing fees to get the probate court documents from Massachusetts. When the thick envelope arrived in my mail, I spread the papers across my floor. There it was. Grandma Vada had left a $200,000 investment account. The will clearly stated it was to be split equally, $100,000 to Fallon and $100,000 to me. Bank transfer records showed that my father withdrew the entire $200,000 in October 2020. He used it to pay off Vaughn's immediate debts. To do this, he forged my signature on the probate closing documents, so the court would think I received my share. But it wasn't enough to save the business. 2 weeks later, he forged my signature on the $75,000 line of credit to finish the job. They stole my inheritance. Then, they stole my name. And everyone in the family knew. Sitting in this motel room a year later, I look at the copies of those probate records, resting safely inside the manila folder. Tomorrow at the retirement party, my father will stand on a stage and talk about his legacy of honesty and hard work. I slide the documents back into the folder and turn off the bedside lamp. I have never felt more awake. The truth about betrayal is that it doesn't just break your heart, it breaks your daily routine. By April 2022, I was surviving on 3 hours of sleep a night. I lost 12 pounds because I was only eating white rice and canned beans. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach flipped, thinking it was another aggressive debt collector. I stopped checking my mailbox because it was always full of final notices. The lowest point came on a Tuesday, April 14th, 2022. It was 11:15 a.m., and I was standing in the teacher's lounge at Lincoln High School, pouring a cup of cheap coffee. The school secretary walked in, looking uncomfortable. Behind her was a tall man in a dark jacket. "Merritt Sterling?" the man asked. "Yes?" He handed me a thick, heavy yellow envelope. "You have been served." He walked out. The teacher's lounge went dead silent. My hands shook as I ripped the envelope open. It was a court summons. The collection agency was officially suing me for the defaulted $75,000 loan, plus late fees and legal penalties. The total amount they demanded was $82,415. If I didn't respond in 30 days, they would garnish my teaching salary. They would take 25% of my monthly paycheck for the rest of my life. I dropped the papers. I walked straight into the staff bathroom, locked the door, and slid down the wall. I pressed my hands over my mouth so no one would hear me sobbing. I was a high school teacher living thousands of miles away, and I was about to be completely destroyed for a house I had never even stepped foot in. A few minutes later, there was a soft knock on the bathroom door. "Merritt? It's Opal." Opal Thorne was the senior school counselor. She was 60 years old, wore colorful knitted sweaters, and had a sharp, no-nonsense way of speaking. We weren't close friends, but she always noticed when my students needed extra help. I unlocked the door. She looked at my red, swollen eyes, then looked at the yellow court papers crushed in my hand. She didn't give me a pitying hug. She didn't tell me everything was going to be okay. Instead, Opal picked up the papers, adjusted her reading glasses, and scanned the front page. "They are coming after your wages," she said flatly. "You have 30 days. Wash your face. At 3:30 p.m., you are coming with me to my brother's office. He is a financial fraud attorney." That afternoon, I sat in a cramped, dusty office in downtown Portland. The room smelled like old paper and strong black tea. Sitting across from me was Silas Thorne. He looked just like his sister. Tired eyes, sharp mind. I told him everything. I told him about my father, the bank, the trust fund, and Fallon's husband. I expected him to be shocked, but Silas just clicked his pen and took notes. "Tears won't stop a wage garnishment, Merritt," Silas said, his voice completely calm. "The legal system doesn't care that he is your father. They only care about paper. You say you didn't sign the digital loan agreement. We need to prove who actually clicked that button." "How?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Every digital signature leaves a footprint," Silas explained, leaning forward. "Because they sued you, we are now in the discovery phase of the court process. This means we have the power to file a legal subpoena to the loan software company. We are going to force them to give us the exact computer location where that document was signed on October 28, 2020. I couldn't afford Silas's normal rate of $300 an hour. So, I cleaned his office on weekends. I organized his filing cabinets. In exchange, he filed the motions. For 5 months, we fought the bank's lawyers. Every time I felt like giving up, Opal would show up at my classroom with a hot meal and sit with me while I graded papers. They became the safety net my real parents never were. Finally, on September 8, 2022, the subpoena results came back. I was sitting in Silas's office when he slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. "Look at the IP address attached to your signature," he said. I looked down. The document showed that the $75,000 loan was signed from an IP address registered to a commercial network. Network owner, U.S. Bank, Chestnut Hill Branch. Terminal ID, Desk 4. Senior Loan Officer Thaddeus Sterling. My father didn't just forge my name. He did it from his own desk, inside the bank, during his working hours. It was a massive, undeniable federal crime. If the bank found out, he wouldn't just lose his job, he would lose his pension, and he could face prison time. I stared at the paper. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the disappointment of the Sterling family. I felt dangerous. "What do you want to do, Merritt?" Silas asked quietly. "I can send this to the police right now." I looked out the window at the rainy Portland street. "No," I said. "Not yet. I need to get the rest of the puzzle first." By October 2022, my life had split into 2 completely different worlds. In the daylight, I was Miss Sterling. I stood in front of 30 teenagers at Lincoln High School, teaching them about the American Civil War and how small conflicts eventually explode into massive battles. I graded quizzes in red ink, wiped down whiteboards, and smiled when my students made jokes. But at night, I was a ghost hunting my own family. The IP address proving my father forged my signature was a massive victory, But Silas told me we needed more. A bank error can be blamed on a computer glitch or a desperate mistake, Silas had said, tapping his pen on his wooden desk. But stealing from a dead woman's trust fund, that requires planning. That shows a pattern. We need the paper trail for Grandma Vada's $200,000. Because I was a named beneficiary in my grandmother's will, Silas explained that I had a legal right to see the bank statements. On October 15, 2022, Silas filed a formal petition for accounting with the Massachusetts probate court. Legally, it meant my father had to show the judge exactly where every single penny of Grandmother Vada's money went. We knew it would take a few weeks for the court to force his hand. What I didn't expect was how my family would react when the legal notice arrived in their mailbox. My father didn't call me. He didn't yell or try to apologize. Instead, he used his favorite weapon. He sent someone else to make me feel guilty. On the evening of November 3rd, I was sitting on my faded apartment sofa, eating a bowl of hot soup. The rain was hitting the window hard. My phone lit up on the coffee table. The caller ID said Aunt Linnea. I let it ring 3 times before I pressed the green button and put it on speaker. Merritt, Linnea said. Her voice wasn't soft or sweet this time. It was tight, breathless, and sharp. What are you doing? Why is there a lawyer from Oregon sending legal threats to your father? It's not a threat, Aunt Linnea, I said. I kept my voice completely flat. I stared at the steam rising from my soup. It's a standard request for accounting. If Grandma's money was spent on her nursing home, the bank records will just show that. You are destroying his health, she snapped. Thaddeus's blood pressure is through the roof. Your mother has been crying for 2 days. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? A court notice delivered to their door by a sheriff. Is it more embarrassing than having your wages garnished for a loan you didn't sign? I asked quietly. Linnea let out a frustrated breath. Listen to me. Vaughn made some bad investments. He owed money to people who play very dirty. If your father didn't use that trust money, Vaughn would have gone to prison. Fallon would have been left alone, pregnant and disgraced. Your father protected this family's name. He did what a father is supposed to do. He is my father too, I whispered. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. You have a job, Linnea fired back, her voice echoing in my quiet apartment. You have your little life out there in Oregon. You don't have a mortgage. You don't have a reputation to maintain in a community like we do. We had to keep Fallon safe. Why can't you just let this go? If you love us, you will call that lawyer and drop this. I closed my eyes. The heater in the corner of my room hummed loudly. For 30 years I would have apologized. I would have backed down to stop my mother from crying. I would have set myself on fire to keep them warm. Aunt Linnea, I said, my voice steady and cold. Tell Dad to send the bank statements to my lawyer. If he doesn't, we will see him in court. I hung up. I blocked her number. Have you ever lost everything to someone who didn't even care? Who looked right past your devastation and chose someone else over you? What would you have done? Would you have stayed quiet or dragged them into the light? And tell me in the omits. I really want to know. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. The little girl who just wanted to be loved by her parents was finally gone. 3 weeks later, on November 26th, a heavy package arrived at Silas's office. The court had forced my father to hand over the records. Silas and I sat in silence as we flipped through the pages. The proof was right there in black and white. On October 10, 2020, my father, acting as the executor, transferred $200,000 from the Vada Sterling estate account directly into a business account registered to Crestview Properties LLC, Vaughn's company. He didn't even try to hide it. He was so confident that I would never question him, so sure that I was too weak to fight back, that he just wired the money directly to his son-in-law. I took the copies of the wire transfers and placed carefully into my brown manila folder, right behind the IP address records. The trap was fully loaded. Now, I just had to wait for the right moment to close it. By December 2022, the crushing weight on my chest finally started to lift. Silas didn't just send a polite letter to the collection agency. He sent a massive, heavily documented legal packet directly to the regional vice president of U.S. Bank. It included the IP address logs, the forged signature file, and the probate court wire transfers. 3 days later, Silas received a phone call from the bank's top corporate lawyers in New York. The conversation lasted less than 10 minutes. That afternoon, I sat in Silas's office, watching the Portland snow fall outside his window. He poured 2 cups of hot tea and handed me one. They dropped the lawsuit, Silas said, a small smile breaking through his serious face. The collection agency is completely backing off. They cleared the $75,000 off your credit report this morning. You are legally safe, Merritt. I closed my eyes and let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in my lungs for a year. I took a sip of the tea. It was warm and sweet. Are they going to call the police on my father? I asked. Silas shook his head slowly. No. Banks hate bad press more than they hate losing money. They are legally required to send a suspicious activity report to federal regulators, Silas explained. But to keep their own stock prices from dropping, and to keep this out of the newspapers, they are going to force him to resign. They will probably give him a few months to pack up his desk quietly. He avoids jail, and the bank avoids a scandal. He will walk away, pretending everything is perfectly normal. For the next 10 months, my life was beautifully quiet. I spent my weekends grading papers in small coffee shops. I bought a used Honda Civic that ran perfectly. When Thanksgiving came around, I didn't sit at a tense dining table in Massachusetts. Instead, Opal invited me to her home. We ate roasted chicken, played board games with her grandchildren, and laughed until my stomach hurt. I realized that a house only feels like a home when you don't have to shrink yourself to fit inside it. Then, on September 14th, 2023, I checked my apartment mailbox. Inside was a thick, expensive-looking square envelope. It was made of heavy cream paper. When I opened it, shiny gold letters caught the light from my kitchen bulb. Fallon and Von Sterling invite you to celebrate the legendary career of Thaddeus Sterling. A grand retirement gala. Harborside Country Club. October 16th, 2023. A yellow sticky note was attached to the back of the invitation. It was written in Fallon's neat, round handwriting. Merritt, Dad is officially retiring. Vaughn and I are paying for this whole event to give him the send-off he deserves. Mom really wants you in the family photos. Please just come and be helpful. We need someone to manage the coat check and the gift table. Wear plain black so you match the background. I stared at the sticky note. I didn't feel angry. I actually laughed. A dry, quiet laugh that echoed in my empty kitchen. My father was being quietly kicked out of his bank for fraud, but he was letting everyone believe he was stepping down like a king. And Fallon was throwing him a $45,000 party, proudly acting like the successful, rich daughter, using the wealth that was built on my stolen inheritance. They wanted me to fly across the country, stand in the shadows in a plain black dress, and hold the coats while they smiled for the cameras. They were so confident that I would obey. They were so sure that I was still the quiet, terrified girl who just wanted to be included. I walked over to my desk and pulled out the brown manila folder. It held the IP logs, the bank transfer receipts, and the trust fund documents. I bought my plane ticket that same night. Now, sitting in this cheap motel room in Boston on the night before the party, I look at the clock. It is 11:30 p.m. I carefully place the folder into my black leather purse. I hang my dress on the back of the door. It isn't a plain black dress. It is a sharp, deep emerald green. I turn off the lights and listen to the rain hitting the motel window. Tomorrow, Thaddeus Sterling is going to have a retirement party he will never ever forget. October 16th, 2023. The air in Boston is sharp and cold, smelling like wet pine needles and expensive car exhaust. At exactly 5:45 p.m., I pull my gray rental car up to the front entrance of the Harborside Country Club. The building is massive, built with dark red brick and huge white pillars. A valet in a crisp black vest opens my door. I hand him the keys, pull my black leather purse onto my shoulder, and walk up the wide stone steps. Inside, the grand ballroom is a sea of wealth. Crystal chandeliers hang from the high ceilings, casting a warm golden light over dozens of round tables covered in white silk cloths. Waiters in white gloves are walking around carrying silver trays of champagne and tiny crab cakes. The room hums with the soft jazz of a live string quartet, and the polite laughter of bankers, real estate agents, and local politicians. I stand at the edge of the room. My emerald green dress brushes against my knees. I feel the heavy weight of the manila folder pressing against my side from inside my purse. Merritt, what on earth are you wearing? I turn around. My mother, Cordelia Sterling, is marching toward me. She is wearing a stunning silver evening gown, her hair perfectly styled, and a string of heavy pearls around her neck. Her public smile is plastered on her face for the guests around us, but her eyes are hard and cold. Before I can answer, Fallon steps up right beside her. Fallon looks like a magazine cover in a tight, sparkling black dress. She is holding a clipboard in one hand and a glass of sparkling water in the other. I specifically wrote on the invitation that you needed to wear plain black, Fallon whispers sharply, her teeth clenched together so the passing waiters won't hear. The photographer is going to have to edit you out of the background now. You are going to ruin the color scheme of the family portraits. For a second, the old Merritt, the girl who spent 30 years trying to keep the peace, feels a familiar tightening in her stomach. The instinct to apologize, to shrink, to run to the bathroom and hide, flares up in my chest. But then, I feel the stiff edge of the folder inside my purse. I look at my sister. I look at the diamond earrings she is wearing, bought with money stolen from my future. The fear vanishes. It is replaced by a deep, quiet calm. I am not in the background today, Fallon, I say, my voice steady and normal, and I won't be in the family portraits. My mother's eye twitches. She steps closer, lowering her voice to a harsh hiss. Don't you dare start drama tonight, Merritt. Your father has worked for 35 years for this moment. This party cost Vaughn and Fallon $45,000. Now go to the front lobby. The coat check girl needs help organizing the tickets. I'm not working the coat check, Mom, I reply, keeping my hands relaxed at my sides. I am a guest. I am going to find my seat. Fallon scoffs, rolling her eyes. Are you serious right now? You haven't spoken to anyone in a year, you show up late, and now you want to be treated like a VIP? Just go hold the coats, Merritt. Stop being so selfish. Selfish? I repeat the word slowly. I let it hang in the air between us. Just then, a loud, cheerful voice interrupts us. Cordelia, Fallon, everything looks absolutely magnificent. It is Mr. Langdon, the regional vice president of U.S. Bank, the man who quietly forced my father to resign to avoid a federal investigation. Instantly, my mother's cold face melts into a bright, warm, glowing smile. It happens so fast it is almost scary to watch. Fallon straightens her posture and beams at him. Oh, Gideon, thank you so much for coming, my mother says, her voice suddenly sweet as honey. Thaddeus is just so thrilled you are here. I wouldn't miss it, Mr. Langdon says, taking a sip of his drink. He doesn't look at me. He doesn't even know who I am. Thaddeus is a legend. We are really going to miss him at the branch. He will miss the branch too, my mother sighs dramatically. But it is time for him to relax and enjoy his grandchildren. I watch the performance. It is flawless. If you didn't know the truth, you would believe every word they said. You would think this was a room full of honest, hard-working people celebrating a lifetime of honor. I don't say anything to Mr. Langdon. I just step around my mother and walk into the main dining room. I find my name card at table 12, located in the far back corner near the kitchen doors. Of course, they put me as far away from the main stage as possible. I pull out my chair and sit down. I place my black leather purse on my lap. At 6:30 p.m., the lights in the ballroom slowly dim. The jazz music stops. A spotlight clicks on, shining directly onto the main stage at the front of the room. The crowd begins to clap. The clapping turns into a standing ovation. From behind the velvet curtains, my father, Thaddeus Sterling, walks out onto the stage. He is wearing a custom-tailored black tuxedo. He waves to the crowd, smiling humbly, placing his hand over his heart as if he is overwhelmed by the love in the room. I stay in my seat. I do not clap. I reach into my purse and unbutton the top clasp. My father stands behind the wooden podium, adjusting the microphone. It makes a sharp, high-pitched whine for a second before the room goes completely silent. 35 years, my father says. His voice is deep and warm, echoing through the speakers. 35 years of walking into the U.S. Bank branch in Chestnut Hill. When I started as a junior clerk, I learned a very simple lesson. Banking is not about money. It is about trust. It is about looking a man in the eye and knowing his character. The crowd murmurs in agreement. At table 2, Aunt Linnea dabs her eyes with a white tissue. I sit in the shadows at table 12, running my thumb over the edge of my brown manila folder. The air smells like roasted beef and expensive perfume, but all I can smell is the dusty paper of Silas's law office. A man's true wealth is not measured by the numbers in his account, my father continues, placing his hand over his heart. It is measured by the people he protects. My family is my greatest investment, my beautiful daughter, Fallon, and the son I always prayed for, Vaughn. He points toward table 1 at the very front. The spotlight swings over, landing on Fallon and Vaughn. They are holding hands, smiling perfectly. My father does not mention my name. He doesn't even look toward the back of the room. I am already erased from his story. Vaughn stands up, buttoning his dark blue suit jacket. He walks up the short stairs to the stage. My father steps back and proudly hands the microphone to him. Thank you, Thaddeus, Vaughn says, flashing his bright white teeth at the audience. When I started my real estate company, Crestview Properties, I was just a young guy with big dreams. The market was tough in 2021. There were times I thought we might lose everything. My stomach tightens. He is actually talking about it. He is standing in front of 100 people, talking about the year they failed, twisting it into a story of triumph. But Thaddeus didn't let us fall, Vaughn says, his voice dripping with fake emotion. He stepped in. He taught me about honest work. He taught me that when a family stands together, no debt is too big to conquer. He is a man of ultimate integrity. Vaughn pulls a small dark green velvet box from his pocket. He opens it, revealing a shiny silver watch under the stage lights. To celebrate a lifetime of honest service, Fallon and I want to give you this Rolex, a small token of our endless respect. The crowd erupts into applause. People are standing up. Flashbulbs from cameras are popping, capturing the perfect moment of the perfect family. My chest is perfectly calm. For years, this kind of moment would have made me cry. I would have felt small, broken, and unloved. But right now, looking at the silver watch bought with stolen money, looking at the man who forged my name being called a hero, I feel nothing but sharp, cold clarity. I open my purse. I pull out the brown manila folder. I hold it tightly in my right hand. I push my chair back. The wooden legs scrape against the hard floor. The sound is sharp, but it is buried under the loud clapping of the audience. I stand up, smoothing out my emerald green dress. I start walking. I don't rush. I walk past table 10, past table 8. As I get closer to the front, the shadows fade, and the bright glow of the stage lights hits my face. Aunt Linnea is the first to see me. She is sitting at table 2. Her hands stop clapping. Her mouth drops open slightly, and the color completely drains from her face. She knows exactly what is happening, but she is too paralyzed to speak. I keep walking. The clapping starts to die down as people notice a woman in a bright green dress marching down the center aisle. Fallon sees me next. She is standing near the edge of the stage. Her perfect smile freezes. She aggressively whispers to Vaughn, pointing at me. Vaughn's confident posture suddenly stiffens. My father looks down from the podium. He sees me holding the thick brown folder. For one split second, the public mask falls off. His eyes widen in pure panic. The man of integrity looks like a trapped animal. I stop right at the bottom of the stage stairs. The room is now completely silent, except for the soft jazz music still playing faintly in the background. 100 pairs of eyes are staring at me. I look up at my father. I do not shout. I do not cry. I just wait for him to speak first. My father clears his throat. The microphone picks up the dry, nervous sound. He grips the edges of the wooden podium so hard his knuckles turn white. He is trying to force his public mask back on. "Merritt," he says. His voice shakes just a little bit, but he forces a tight fake smile. "Sweetheart, we are so glad you decided to join us, but we are in the middle of the presentations. Why don't you go sit down with your mother?" He points toward table 1. Cordelia is already out of her chair, walking quickly toward the stage. Her heels click sharply on the wooden floor. "Come on, Merritt," she whispers loudly, grabbing my elbow. Her manicured nails dig hard into my skin. "You are embarrassing yourself. Let's go to the hall. Now." In the past, that sharp pinch on my arm would have made me freeze. I would have put my head down and walked away to keep the peace. But today, I look down at my mother's hand. "Let go of me, Mom," I say. I don't shout. I speak in the same calm, steady voice I use when 2 students are arguing in my classroom. My mother's eyes widen. She slowly pulls her hand back as if she just touched a hot stove. I take the last 2 steps up to the stage. Vaughn is standing right there, holding the velvet box with the shiny silver watch. He tries to block my way to the podium. "Merritt, seriously," Vaughn mutters, his jaw tight. "Don't do this here. Not tonight. You are ruining his moment." "His moment?" I ask, looking right into Vaughn's eyes. I open the brown manila folder. I pull out a stack of papers. They are heavy, thick, and undeniable. "You mean the moment where you thank him for saving your real estate company? I just thought people should know exactly how he saved it." I don't hand the papers to Vaughn. I turn around and look at the crowd. 100 silent faces are staring back at me. I find Mr. Langdon, the regional vice president of U.S. Bank, sitting at table 3. He looks completely confused. "Mr. Langdon," I say. My voice carries across the quiet room. "A few months ago, my lawyer Silas Thorne sent your legal team in New York a file. It showed that Thaddeus Sterling used his computer at desk 4 to forge my signature on a $75,000 loan." The room suddenly erupts into loud gasps. People shift in their seats. Mr. Langdon's face drops. The color completely leaves his cheeks. He knows exactly what I am talking about. "Your lawyers told us the bank was handling the fraud quietly," I continue, my voice never shaking, never rising. They forced him to resign to protect the bank's reputation. So, I am just a little surprised to see you here tonight, clapping for a man you fired for stealing. Merritt, shut your mouth, my father suddenly hisses, forgetting the microphone is still on. His angry, sharp voice blasts through the massive speakers. Several guests physically jump in their seats. The charming, perfect father is gone. The real Thaddeus Sterling is standing there, red in the face, sweating, and shaking with rage. She is lying, my father yells to the crowd, pointing a shaking finger at me. She has always been unstable. She is jealous of her sister. She is making all of this up because she failed out there in Oregon. I'm not making it up, Dad, I say, turning back to him. I pull out the first document. This is the IP address log from your bank. It proves the digital signature happened inside your branch, during your shift, while I was 3,000 miles away teaching a history class. I place the paper flat on the podium, right over his speech notes. He stares at it like it is a poisonous snake. And this, I say, pulling out the second stack of papers. I turn to Vaughn. Vaughn is stepping backward, his eyes darting toward the exit doors. This is a wire transfer from the Massachusetts probate court. It shows that on October 10, 2020, Thaddeus Sterling took $200,000 out of Grandmother Vada's trust fund, the money that belonged to me and Fallon. He wired every single penny directly into the business account of Crestview Properties. I drop the bank records on the floor right at Vaughn's feet. They scatter across the dark stage. Fallon lets out a loud, shaking gasp. She drops her glass of water. It shatters on the floor. Wait, what? She stammers, looking from the papers on the floor to Vaughn's pale face. Vaughn? You told me you got a private investor, you said. Fallon, baby. Listen, I had to. Vaughn starts stuttering, holding his hands up. The investors were going to take the house. I didn't have a choice. You took my grandmother's money? Fallon screams, her voice cracking. The perfect image of the perfect couple shatters right in front of the whole room. My father grabs my shoulder, spinning me around to face him. You ungrateful little brat, he snarls, his voice dripping with venom. I am your father. I gave you a roof over your head. I fed you. You owe me everything, and you come here to destroy my family? You destroyed it, Dad. I whisper, looking at the broken man in front of me. I'm just turning on the lights. The silence in the grand ballroom is so deep that I can actually hear the ice melting in the water glasses on the tables. My mother is the first one to move. For 30 years her job in this family has been to sweep the dirt under the rug. She rushes forward, her heavy pearl necklace swinging, and tries to pick up the scattered bank records from the stage floor. Her hands are shaking violently. Everyone, please, my mother says to the crowd, her voice trembling. She forces a painful plastic smile. I am so sorry. My daughter Merritt has been going through a very difficult time. She is very confused. Please, just enjoy your dinners. I am not confused, Mom, I say quietly. I don't move. I don't try to stop her from picking up the papers. You can throw those in the trash if you want. It doesn't change the truth. You knew about the money, didn't you? My mother stops. She stays frozen on her knees, clutching the crumpled bank wires to her chest. She looks up at me. Her eyes are completely full of tears, but there is no guilt in them. There is only anger. We did it for Fallon, my mother cries out, her voice cracking. She isn't performing for the crowd anymore. She is defending her reality. Vaughn was going to lose the house. Do you know what that would do to your sister? She would have been a laughingstock in this town. We had to protect her. You are single, Merritt. You just live in some cheap apartment. You didn't need that much money. The crowd gasps again. This time it isn't because of what I said. It is because my mother just confessed in front of 100 people. Fallon stares at our mother, her face completely pale. You stole Grandma's money for Vaughn? Fallon whispers. She looks down at her expensive black dress, her diamond earrings, and the shiny silver watch still sitting in Vaughn's hands. The perfect life she thought she built was just a house of cards paid for by my stolen future. We protected your marriage, Fallon, my father yells, stepping forward. He is sweating heavily, his face bright red. He points at me. I took care of this family. I made the hard choices. And this is the thanks I get? A public execution by my own daughter? Thaddeus, that is enough. The voice comes from the floor. It is deep and firm. Mr. Langdon, the regional vice president of the bank, stands up from table 3. He buttons his suit jacket. He doesn't look angry. He just looks incredibly disgusted. Gideon, please, my father stammers, his arrogant tone vanishing in a second. He suddenly looks like a terrified little boy. Gideon, let me explain. It was a family emergency. You forged a federal document inside my bank, Thaddeus, Mr. Langdon says coldly. We filed the reports with the government, but we gave you the chance to leave quietly because of your 35 years of history. We tried to let you keep your dignity, but you decided to throw a party with stolen money. Mr. Langdon turns away from the stage. He looks at his wife. Get your coat, Maud. We are leaving. As Mr. Langdon walks toward the grand double doors of the ballroom, the spell breaks. The illusion of the perfect Sterling family shatters completely. The mayor of Chestnut Hill stands up and quickly walks out. 2 senior loan officers from the bank follow him. Chairs scrape loudly against the wooden floor as dozens of guests grab their purses and coats. No one says goodbye. No one looks at my parents. They just drop their napkins on the tables and rush toward the exit to get away from the disaster. Wait, please, Aunt Linnea suddenly shouts, standing up from table 2. She waves her hands desperately at the leaving guests. She turns and glares at me. How could you do this here? You should have kept this inside the house. You ruined your own family in public. But no one listens to her. The enabler has lost her audience. I stand on the stage and watch the room empty out. I thought I would feel happy. I thought I would feel a rush of victory, like a hero at the end of a movie. But real life isn't a movie. I just feel incredibly tired. My father sinks into a chair on the stage, putting his face in his hands. He is taking deep, ragged breaths. My mother is sitting on the floor, crying loudly, still holding the crumpled papers. Vaughn is standing near the stairs, staring blankly at the wall. And Fallon is looking at me. For the first time in our entire lives, she isn't looking at me like I am a background character. She is looking at me with pure shock. I carefully place the rest of my documents back into the brown manila folder. I close the clasp. I walk down the short wooden stairs, stepping past Vaughn without saying a word. I don't run. I just walk slowly down the center aisle, past the empty tables covered in half-eaten crab cakes and abandoned wine glasses. The heavy air of the ballroom feels lighter with every step I take toward the exit. The heavy glass doors of the Harborside Country Club close behind me with a soft click. The sudden silence of the outside world hits my ears. The cold Boston wind bites through my thin emerald dress, but I don't shiver. I just stand on the wet stone steps and breathe. Really breathe. For the first time in my life, my chest doesn't feel like it is tied in tight knots. A young valet with a name tag that says Judson runs up with my gray rental car. He leaves the engine running and hands me the keys. He looks at my face, probably noticing how pale I am, but he doesn't say anything. Merritt, wait. Fallon is pushing through the glass doors. She is shivering in her sleeveless black dress. Her perfect hair is ruined by the wind, and dark mascara is running down her cheeks. She looks like a terrified little girl, not a successful real estate wife. She stops a few feet away from me. She wraps her arms around herself. Are you really just going to leave? Fallon's voice shakes. Vaughn and Dad are screaming at each other inside. Mom is just sitting on a chair crying. The club manager is asking who is going to pay the remaining balance for the party because Vaughn's card just declined. I look at her. I'm going home, Fallon. What am I supposed to do? She cries, stepping closer. Vaughn lied to me. Dad lied to me. If the business is broke, how am I going to pay the mortgage? Merritt, please. You know how to handle things like this. You always fix things. Tell me what to do. For a second I see the trap. The old family habit. They make a mess, and they expect me to clean it up. They break the glass, and they want me to cut my hands picking up the pieces. You have to figure it out yourself, I say softly. My voice has no anger left, just a calm, heavy truth. You are 29 years old. It is time to pay for your own life. I open the car door. We are sisters, Fallon shouts, her voice desperate and sharp. I pause, looking over the roof of the car. We share the same parents, Fallon. That is all we share. I get into the driver's seat, shut the heavy metal door, and put the car in drive. As I pull out of the circular driveway, I look in the rearview mirror. Fallon is standing alone under the bright yellow streetlights, wrapping her arms around her chest. Nobody is coming out to save her. The drive to the airport is completely silent. I don't turn on the radio. I just watch the red taillights of the cars in front of me on the highway. At 6 a.m., my Delta flight takes off from Boston. As the plane pushes through the thick gray morning clouds, I lean my head against the cold plastic window. The adrenaline that kept me standing on that stage finally leaves my blood. My muscles ache like I just ran a marathon. I close my eyes and sleep for the entire 6-hour flight. When I unlock the door to my Portland apartment, it is late afternoon. The air inside smells like old books and the lavender soap I leave by the kitchen sink. The old radiator in the corner makes a loud clank sound, welcoming me back. I drop my black leather purse on the small wooden table. I take out the brown manila folder. It looks thinner now. The heavy papers are gone, left on a wooden stage 3,000 miles away. I don't put the folder in a drawer. I drop it directly into the metal trash can under my sink. It lands with a soft thud. It is over. The next morning, I walk into the teacher's lounge at Lincoln High School at 7:15 a.m. The room smells like cheap roasted coffee and dry erase markers. Opal is standing by the coffee machine, wearing a bright yellow knitted sweater. When she sees me, she stops pouring. She doesn't ask me how the party went. She doesn't ask for the dramatic details. She just looks at my face, reads my eyes, and smiles a soft, warm smile. "I brought an extra blueberry muffin today," Opal says, sliding a small paper plate across the counter. "Sit down, Merritt. Let's have breakfast before the kids get here." I pull out a plastic chair and sit down. I take a sip of the hot coffee. It is the best thing I have ever tasted. 6 months later, April 2024. The Portland spring brings a soft, warm rain that makes the tall pine trees outside look bright and alive. I am sitting in my classroom at Lincoln High School. It is 4:15 p.m. and the building is perfectly quiet. The students have gone home for the day. My room smells like fresh floor wax and the damp earth outside my open window. I am grading a stack of history essays with a red pen when my cell phone vibrates against the wooden desk. The screen lights up. It is a voicemail from an unknown number. I put my pen down, pick up the phone, and press play. The small speaker crackles with static. "Merritt, it's Dad." His voice sounds completely different. The deep, confident, booming tone of the proud senior loan officer is completely gone. He sounds old. He sounds incredibly tired and small. "I don't know if you will listen to this." His voice continues, pausing as a loud truck drives by in the background of his recording. "Your mother and I, we had to move. We are in a small 2-bedroom apartment in South Boston now. The bank took away my full retirement pension. They threatened to press federal charges if I tried to fight them in court. We had to sell the big house in Chestnut Hill just to pay off the rest of Vaughn's debts and the massive bill from the country club." I lean back in my chair, resting my hands on my lap, watching the rain hit the classroom window. "Vaughn left Fallon," my father's voice cracks, thick with a heavy sadness. "When the money finally ran out, he packed his bags and drove to Florida. Fallon is working at a retail clothing store downtown. She cries almost every night. Your mother doesn't go to her charity events anymore. The people in our old neighborhood, they completely stopped returning our phone calls." A long, heavy silence fills the voicemail. Then, I hear a sharp, shaky sigh. "I was wrong, Merritt," he whispers. "I thought I was keeping the family together, but I ruined everything. I destroyed my relationship with my own daughter. I am so sorry. Please, just call your mother. She just wants to hear your voice." The message ends with a soft electronic beep. For a long time, I just sit there in the quiet classroom, holding the black plastic phone in my hand. A year ago, a voicemail like that would have completely broken my heart. I would have felt that familiar, overwhelming urge to fix their pain. I would have called them back immediately, crying, apologizing for my part in their misery, telling them that we could start over. But today, I look at the dark screen of my phone, and I just feel a quiet, distant sadness. It feels like reading a sad chapter in a history book about strangers. My father finally admitted he was wrong. He finally said the exact words I waited 30 years to hear. "I am sorry, but an apology doesn't fix a stolen identity. It doesn't erase the absolute fact that I was only useful to them when they needed someone to sacrifice. They are only sorry now because the bright stage lights were turned off, the money is gone, and they have to live in the cold reality they created. They don't miss me, they just miss having someone to carry their heavy boxes." I press the delete button. The voicemail disappears from the screen forever. I don't block the number, but I don't save it either. I just let it go. When I tell this story, I still wonder, should I have called the cops sooner? If I'd reported the fraud to police and said, "It's me, I'm pressing charges," maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe Dad would have pleaded guilty, or maybe Fallon would have found a way to twist that too. What do you think? Should I have called the cops from the start, or was waiting for the party the right call? I've gone back and forth on this 100 times, and I still don't have a clean answer. Let me know in the comments. I'd honestly love to hear what you'd have done differently. I pick up my red pen and go back to grading my students' essays. Tonight, Opal is hosting a big spring dinner at her house. Silas is bringing fresh grilled salmon, and I promised to bake an apple pie. I need to finish grading these papers so I can go home to the people who actually want me at their table. October 2025. 2 years later. The bell rings at exactly 3:15 p.m., and my classroom immediately fills with the loud, chaotic energy of 30 teenagers rushing to pack their heavy backpacks. Don't forget, Chapter 4 reading is due on Thursday. I call out over the noise, wiping down the main whiteboard. A few kids wave as they walk out the door. When the room finally clears, I grab my own bag and lock the door behind me. I walk out of the main entrance of Lincoln High School and into the bright, crisp autumn afternoon. The air in Oregon is perfectly cool today, and the trees are just starting to turn a deep, beautiful orange. I don't walk toward the bus stop anymore. I walk to the far end of the staff parking lot, clicking a small black remote. The lights on a dark blue Toyota Camry flash twice. It is completely paid off. I drive across town, listening to the radio, feeling the late afternoon sun warm the steering wheel. I pull into the driveway of a small, one-story house in the St. John's neighborhood. It has a tiny front porch, a bright yellow front door, and a small garden box where I am trying, and mostly failing, to grow fresh tomatoes. I unlock the front door and drop my keys on the counter. The house is completely quiet, but it doesn't feel empty. It feels safe. It is 900 square feet of peace, bought entirely on my own, with my own repaired credit score, and my own hard-earned teaching salary. I walk into the kitchen, tie an apron around my waist, and start chopping vegetables for dinner. At 6:30 p.m., there is a loud, familiar knock on the bright yellow door. I dry my hands on a towel and open it. Silas is standing there, holding a large white bakery box tied with red string. Opal is right behind him, carrying a heavy glass bowl of potato salad. The traffic on the bridge was terrible. Silas groans playfully, handing me the pastry box. But we brought the chocolate eclairs you asked for. I made him stop at 3 different bakeries to find the right ones. Opal laughs, stepping inside and giving me a warm, tight hug that smells like lavender and clean laundry. We sit around my small wooden dining table. The food is simple: baked chicken, roasted carrots, and the potato salad. We don't use expensive crystal glasses or silver forks, but the room is completely full of loud laughter, comfortable silence, and absolute honesty. When dinner is finished, I clear the plates and pour 3 mugs of hot green tea. Did you ever hear from the bank in Boston? Silas asks softly, taking a sip of his tea. He isn't acting as my lawyer anymore. He is just a friend asking a normal question. No, I say, leaning back in my chair. I heard from Aunt Linnea about a year ago. She sent a Christmas card to my school address. She wrote a long note inside, saying my mother's health is getting worse, and they are all praying for me to find my way back home. What did you do with it? Opal asks gently. I threw it away, I reply. And it is the absolute truth. I didn't feel a drop of anger. I didn't feel guilty. I just felt a quiet, simple truth settling deep inside my bones. Blood only gives you relatives. Actions give you a family. My parents wanted a girl who would stand in the shadows, wear plain black, and quietly absorb all their mistakes to protect their perfect public image. But that girl died a long time ago, on a dirty tile floor inside a bank branch. The woman sitting at this small wooden table in Portland is someone they will never understand, and someone they will never be allowed to hurt again. I look at Opal, passing the bakery box across the table. I look at Silas, laughing at a joke about one of my history students. I look around my small, warm, perfectly peaceful house. I am already home. If this story meant something to you, please hit like and subscribe. And if you want another story about someone who refused to be background dirt, check the link in the description. I picked it just for you. Thank you for staying with me all the way through. I'll see you in the next.